Hello all you Photoshop users. Today we're going to look a little bit more at the hue saturation tool. I touched on it briefly in my first video, and some people had some additional questions as far as how to best use it. I thought I would use this bag that I shot for a client to show you how to use the tool. First off, I will zoom in using Command plus. I'm going to hit it twice, and then I'll use my move tool to center some of these colors up. To bring up the hue saturation tool, you can go up into Image, Adjustments, Hue Saturation, or you can use the shortcut Command U. Now, there's several parts of the hue saturation. There is a hue, which changes the color. There's a saturation that affects the brightness or the dullness of the color, and then there's an overall lightness of that color. Right now we're in the master. Now, if I go in here and change the colors dramatically, you can see how the colors are changing, but this white is not. The closer a tone is to a neutral gray or a white, the less ability you will have to affect that tone using the hue saturation tool. You will have to use something like curves to adjust the tones of the colors that are a little bit more neutral. First off, as far as the hue saturation, let's look at these two rainbows down here. This top one is the colors as they are now. The second one will show you the colors after you make the adjustment. Now, if I go into hue saturation, you can see where the reds are lined up right now. If I pull it this way, you can see now, according to the rainbow, that my reds are now blue. If I go the opposite way, my reds are now closer to the yellow tone. I'll zero this out because that's not necessarily what we want to do. A couple of ways to get to specific colors is you can either go through the master and pick a color, or you can go down to this little hand and pick on a color. I'll click on this red and it automatically brings me to a red, and this shows me the range of colors that it has picked. Now I can go in and I can adjust this hue of this red, and you can see where it's going from red to yellow to blue to orange depending on where I put my hue. I'll zero this out again. Sometimes when you have a color like this, it's easy to manipulate it. Sometimes when you have colors like yellows and also greens, it gets a little harder to adjust because there is some yellow in these green leaves. What we'll need to do is be a little bit more specific on the tone we want. I'll click on this yellow, and now you can see how it's selected this yellow. Now, these little gray areas here are how we're going to adjust that color. First, I'll show you right now, if I go slide my hue, you can see how not only the flowers, but also these petals have changed. So this is too wide. You can see up in this transition where it's picking up some of the green. That's not what I want. The reds are a good bit away, so I don't really need to adjust that. But I want to make sure there's not hardly any green in the area that I pick. So first, I'm going to tighten up this range, and then I'm really going to bring this transition down. So there's hardly any green up here because I don't want to touch any of this color right in here. So now if I go into the hue saturation, you can see where the effects are much less. There's still some, so I'll slide this down just a little bit more, get a little bit further away from that green. Now if I use the hue slider, you can see where I'm affecting that color, and the leaves are not being changed at all. So if we go in, I want to take this a little bit yellow. I can increase the saturation, and say we want to take it just a little bit brighter, a little bit more saturation. Now we can go into the preview and see what we've done. You can see where I've brightened them up just a little bit. And let's go back, click on the reds now. We'll darken those down some. So I'll go to my saturation. I'm going to darken them down to make them just a little bit more intense. Now if I use the preview, you can see where not only where the reds have gotten a little bit darker, the yellows have also gotten a little bit brighter, but the greens are not affected. One other way to affect these sliders is you can go in and use these eyedroppers. If you want to add to a sample, you can click on this. You can subtract from a sample doing this, and that will also give you some effects. I'm going to get out of this altogether. So now I'll bring up the hue saturation again by hitting Command U. And instead of going to the master and using this hand, what we'll do is we'll go to the yellows. And now you can see where I've got this little eyedropper highlighted. I will click over here Now we'll go into the minus eyedropper to reduce some of the green. So I'll click on this dark green and you can see how it's reduced it some. And then I'll click on this light green and you can see how it's really narrowed that tone down. If I go in now, you can see where it's still affecting it a little bit, but if I drag this in really tight, then you can see how that's going to help. So now that green is not affected. So a couple different ways using the same tool to get the colors you want selected to adjust them how you want. Hopefully that helps. More to come.